is your first class, welcome to the Gigi Chocolate Extravaganza. If this is your second, third, fifth, I don't know, today,
20th.
You've been here all weekend. You guys are troopers, and we're so grateful for you just sticking it out and celebrating this great holiday season. We just love to kick it off.
We do love to kick it off.
As we were planning our event, we knew we needed to reach out to our honorary adopted brother, Spencer, which if you follow us on Instagram, you know was a huge part of getting us through COVID
And me through COVID.
and doing all the things in the kitchen. We were in a transition period where our sister Candace decided, I don't know why, but she's real amazing, decided to homeschool her kids and was like, she came to me one day, she's like, this is the hardest thing I'm gonna have to do, but I think I need to homeschool my kids. And it just felt right, and it felt like it was just, you gotta go home and you gotta be a mom and you gotta just take care of yourself. And that very exact day, I happened to be down on the registers, running the registers, which I don't do as often as I would love to do. And Spencer and his mom came through and he just said, so I just moved back here from New York and I just got stuck here because of COVID and I'm just doing a little baking in my mom's kitchen, and if you need some help, I would love to work here. And it was as if like everything was screaming, hire him right now, just snag him, he's great. And I just was like, well, sure, send me, like, let's talk. Meanwhile, there's like a line at the registers, and I'm like, okay, we'll figure
That
this
usually
out.
happens when she gets talking. You know, there's like a line forever, and you just have to keep going.
No, yes, I have a lot to say.
Of course, I love that.
But it was like just instant. Like, we just knew that Spencer needed to be a part of our team here, and he just fit right in. We come from a house of all girls, and he fit in like the little brother that we needed to have. And so everyone asks, like, are you and Spencer still friends now that he's not working here? And I'm like, we're still friends. He's still like a brother. He comes and shops all the time. I wish he did more baking, but currently he's
A little busy.
doing marketing for the city of Salt Lake.
Yes.
But it's fun to see what he does. He was performing at Hell Center Theater, doing singing in the rain. Sorry,
Similar, yeah.
guys, I'm not the theater person. I went just to see
She came
Spencer.
to see the show.
And are you in an?
I'm in a new show, Titanic, the musical. Come on down. I dive in, so that's great.
So we'll celebrate with cookies.
Yeah, come on down.
But we knew we wanted to have him be a part of this. Spencer would bake for us a lot when we were doing our testing, and it's fun to see how his mind works and the different recipes that he gravitates to. I selfishly picked his party cookie. Everyone else on the floor was really mad that I didn't pick his Oreo cookie
That's chocolate.
because it's chocolate. But this has white chocolate in, and I
Yeah.
feel like we haven't highlighted white chocolate enough this weekend. But I mainly picked this recipe because of the roots as to where it comes from. And so that speaks to our Orson Gigi hearts of taking his grandma's recipe and tweaking it to make it his own. And so I think that resonates with all of us. And so Spencer will teach you guys like how you can take some of like your long-standing family recipes and then apply new principles that we've now learned that grandmas did that we don't. Like sometimes I'm like, how did they just bake and cook so beautifully? Because they don't have the tools and the education that we do. So Spencer's going to give you guys lots of information, and then we're going to have some party cookies and just end the day on a high note with lots of confetti sprinkles. So.
I love it.
But thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
We love you.
Oh, this is like being here next to her just feels like home.
Oh.
Seriously. We made thousands of videos
We
in
did.
however long I was here.
And they're still on my phone.
They're on my phone too, like 30,000 photos later.
Yes.
But I just love you
Oh,
so
we
much,
love you.
and to be here is amazing. I'm Spencer, like Heather said, and I just have to thank the Gigi team because, hi. Yeah, I think we could go a little bit longer. But this one's good. The next one, yeah, we're good. Yeah, this place just feels like home. Seriously, she told you a little bit, but when I first got home from New York, I was an actor in New York, and I did that whole thing for a while, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I was like in this crisis mode, you know, baking in my mom's kitchen, which was amazing, but also I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And so Heather and the whole Gigi team, there's Brad the dad, they just like brought me in and were like, what do you want to do? Like, how can we help you, you know, while you're here in Salt Lake? And we just had the most amazing time, and seriously, every day I am so thankful for that. I'm going to try not to cry, but Seriously, it saved my life, and I'm so thankful. So to get to come back is like such a full circle moment. I'll tell you a little bit about, I have this brand called Small Kitchen Sweets. I brought stickers. And when I was living in New York, you know, being an actor is very difficult. It is not for everybody, and it's just a hard life to live, especially in New York City. And so I had to find a creative outlet that wasn't attached to my self-worth as a person. I'm not saying like you're ugly or you're a bad singer. I wanted to do something that I was like, I know I can be good at that. So one day I went to the library after a really horrible audition, and I got a cookbook. And that cookbook was this, the Martha Stewart Baking Handbook. I had to bring it because this book, I like went through the whole book and taught myself how to bake. In a tiny New York kitchen. That's why it's called Small Kitchen Sweets, because I lived in a studio apartment, tiny half-size oven, like I couldn't even fit a cookie sheet in it. It was crazy. And I was baking pies and doing all kinds of things that I had never done before in this tiny kitchen. And so this book like really means a lot to me, and actually, full circle, I got to meet Martha Stewart and she signed it. Oh, it's the best day ever. But Martha's my gal, and this book means a ton to me. So this was like what I was doing, and then I started to post it on Instagram, and I would make funny videos of me like shopping at the grocery store and giving people tips. And this was before TikTok, I think, even existed. Like I wasn't doing it, I just was doing it to be fun and be funny. And someone was like, you should make a separate account. So I started to do that. And then COVID hit, and I was like, okay, so I'm at home in my mom's kitchen, not doing anything, and I started to bake a ton more. I mean, my sister, she's back here, she was my little assistant in the kitchen. She likes to think that she had all the bad jobs. Yeah, she washed all the dishes. But no, seriously, we like started this business together, and we made cookies every single week. We made macarons. I perfected macarons, and we made like 60 dozen macarons one week to sell to our neighbors. And so like that was happening, and I was posting on Instagram and doing this blog and all of these kinds of things, and then I found Gigi, and that was because I was shopping here, and I was like, I need to meet whoever. I don't even think I followed the store on Instagram.
I think I made you as a...
You did.
Yeah.
She was like, can you please like follow us, you'll see what we do. And I was like, wow, I need to be doing that. When I was living in New York, I worked at Williams-Sonoma and Sur La Table, and I taught classes there, but there's something different about this place. And for the first couple of months, I was like, what is going on here? Like, it didn't compute to me that it was like a store, but also a family, and they were running a business, but then it was also like testimony meeting all the time. I was like, there's so much happening here.
Very good.
It literally, thank you, yeah, you can put that on a shirt.
Yeah.
But I just was like, it didn't compute to me, and then once I got in there, I was like, oh yeah, the scoop. You got it. Okay. We'll go over that later. But anyway, so this store this was like a huge part of the Small Kitchen Sweets journey. And to me, and I feel like I taught classes for thousands of people all the time on Instagram, but to be here in front is amazing. So anyway, I will continue on. We'll make a cookie in a second, but I like feeling it. So then I made this party cookie, which is what we're gonna make today. And I know the chocolate, we'll get to the chocolate and why it's important. We're gonna talk about baking chips and how they're different. You've been through couverture and compound. We'll go over it a little bit later as well. But the party cookie, I love funfetti. You know, funfetti cake mix is the best. And I've always wanted to like have some kind of cookie like that. And you know, you go places and they have one, but it's never really that great because it's too dang sweet. I'm not naming any names because I probably will be sued by Crumbl. They have these really sweet cookies, and I was like, there's got to be some way to do that. And so, like Heather said, I took my grandmother's recipe. Grandma Carol, she taught me how to bake when I was little. My mother, unfortunately, doesn't bake a ton, but she does make Grandma's cookies better than anybody else. So I learned from her for that. But I took her recipe and I kind of just like started to make changes. And this was after I had started to bake and I was understanding the chemistry more. And I said, how can I make a really good cookie? Like, what are the things that need to go into it? So we're going to talk about it today, but this kind of came from that. Then it was featured, it went viral on my blog, they put it in the magazine, like it's gone through so many iterations, and that's amazing. And I still, to this day, every time someone tries it, this is the best cookie I've ever had. And I'm not making it up. So like, that's pretty good. If you say that, I'm a fan of that. So let's go through the baking process. Obviously, we know how to make cookies, but I'm just going to kind of break down each step and talk you through some things that I've learned along the way. I've made thousands of these cookies. They're a hit, so I hope you like them too. Okay, first things first. I had to bring my own scale because Heather and I have this thing where she loves the Escaley scale, but I love the OXO scale. You can buy both of these here, but she will recommend a scaly. I will recommend this. Scales are huge.
Those are only five.
It's our only fight, seriously. Like, I love this scale more than anything. It's incredible. OXO is an amazing brand, so if you need a scale, I recommend this, but Heather might say something different. But if you don't weigh your ingredients, let's start there. If you leave with any knowledge, I need you to weigh. It sounds like it's dramatic and it's like harder to do, but it's actually so much easier. These poor ladies in the kitchen have been doing dishes all day long, and I said you will have 3 dishes from me because weighing takes all of that out of it. And so I think that that's something you can learn. Weigh your ingredients. A ton of recipes these days have the weight already for you because that's kind of the modern way of baking. I know our grandparents took the scoop out, but that's a change that I made. You can see there's weights on here for most things. Yeah, use the weight. Do not use a cup because also the cup is not exact. I made it to be 200 grams, but like a cup of shortening, if you like measure it, is a little bit more than that. So use the weight. Another thing, tools. I mean, we've got some basics here. We've got some scoops. We'll talk about it as we go along. A big thing you're gonna need is a big cookie cutter. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We've got a mixer here. You can do this by hand, but I would not recommend it because we're doing the creaming method, and I'll talk a little bit about that when we get there. And then cookie sheets. I mean, obviously these are like the Gigi cookie sheet, and you need one of these. And we love these pre-cut parchment sheets. So those are some of the things you need. If you have any questions along the way, just yell at me. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about cookie types as well. There's so many types. Today, this is a drop cookie. There's rolled cookies, which is like a sugar cookie that you might cut out for the holidays. We've got shaped cookies. We made some really fun candy cane cookies where you roll pieces of dough out and like twist them up. That's a shaped cookie. Cool and slice, you know, the old ones with like the Santa Claus in the middle. That's a cool and slice. Pressed cookies, bar cookies when you're feeling really lazy, you just lay it out in a pan and throw it in. Grandma loved to do that. So there's lots of different types. This is a drop cookie today. So let's kind of get started here. Another controversial part about this is we use shortening, not butter. I've gotten so many, it's mostly from the people who are New Yorkers, like East Coasters. They're like, shortening, gross. And I'm like, no, you guys. First of all, you're not gonna eat the whole batch. Well, depends on the day, I guess you could. But it's fine to do this occasionally. It's vegetable shortening. I know it's not the best thing for you, but it makes this cookie what it is. And Grandma did that, and so we're not changing it. I have done it with butter, and it works, but it's not the same. So if you really don't want to use shortening, you go for it, but don't call me when it doesn't work. Another thing too is let's refrain from butter flavored shortening. You have to use plain. The butter flavor really messes with it. This is just some good old Kroger brand. I really like Crisco. I mean, whatever you use, it's fine, but don't use the butter flavor. It really changes it. So you're seeing, I'm just putting this in here, and I've tared my scale to be 0. Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
Are you opposed to butter flavor shortening, or just for this cookie?
I don't really like the artificial flavor of butter. Well, I'm gonna lie. In a second, we're gonna use some butter flavored. But I don't know, for some reason in the shortening, it just doesn't work for me. So if you use it, you go girl. But if you don't, I would prefer not for this cookie. But I'm not against it, it just the flavor isn't my favorite. So I tared this out. So what I did, I put this on and I pushed tare to 0. So now I'm getting only what's going into this bowl. And so I'm just scooping this out. They also make those like sticks that are already measured out to be 1 cup, which is fine if you don't bake a ton, but I like buy this from Costco in a huge thing of shortening. It's disgusting. But it's like, I'm just gonna do this and then measure it into here because I'm using a scale and it's so easy. So we're doing 200 grams of this, and this recipe is so easy to remember because it's 200 grams of shortening. We've got 200 grams of brown sugar. I'm gonna put this in here. You can use dark, you can use light. It doesn't really matter. So I just zeroed it out, and I'm gonna put this in here. And the nice thing too, I am obviously using bowls because we're like doing a demo right now, but at home, I just measure it directly from the container into this. And so I'm just, again, not making any dishes, any unnecessary dishes for myself. I don't want, because I have to do the dishes. Unless I'm at my mother's house, then she will do the dishes because she's very good at doing dishes. Or Summer. Summer does the dishes too.
Are you taking the hard one?
Yeah, I'm just taking some lumps out.
He prepped an
I
hour ago.
yeah, I found this one. Yeah, I don't know even. Maybe I brought from home. I don't even know where this came from. Okay, there we go. 200. Okay, and then we've got 200 grams of white sugar. So it's just 200, 200, 200. And again, I made it to be that because honestly, when I was making this, I didn't want to have to remember like 197. And when I double it, I just am like, oh, okay, it's 400 instead. Because 1 cup is like 203, I think, or something. So I was just like, just 200. So again, if you're gonna make this, make it the way it says on the paper. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna take this now. We're gonna put this on the mixer. I'm also a big believer in the creaming method when we're doing cookies. Oh gosh, I hate these. There we go. And I like to let this go for a really long time because I really want that light and fluffy quality here. The shortening is nice because you do not have to remember to take the butter out of the fridge and make sure it's softening up. This is just ready to go, and we're good to go with it. Is there running water in here? Oh, there is. Can you just turn on the hottest water that there is?
Takes a minute.
Oh,
Look at here.
okay, look at this. It doesn't have, it's fine. But. Okay, so we're gonna let this go for a second. And honestly, this recipe is super basic. Everything you should have in your house. Some of the extracts that we'll talk about in a second you might not have, but any baking equipped kitchen should have them. So we'll talk about it in a second. So we're just gonna let this go for a minute. She's prepping the hot water. There's hot water in this. I really, truly don't know why. And it does make a difference. If it's not hot, there's a little bit of a difference, but the recipe, it's funny, I have this original recipe that my grandmother wrote out framed in my kitchen because it just means so much. And the original recipe was a chocolate chip cookie recipe. And so I took that and adapted it to this, and I've made a bunch of other cookie recipes using that as the base. But she says hot water on it, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna mess with grandma. There's a few things I've messed with, but not the hot water. Okay, we're just getting this ready to go. It's not, hold on. I also usually don't scrape things. I know that's a sin as well, but yeah, I don't usually do that. I just let it go. So we're gonna let this go. Is that hot?
It's very hot.
Oh, good. Okay, I'm ready. We're just gonna use 4 tablespoons of hot water. In the original recipe, I think it has like the weight measurement. I don't think this does here, but 4 tablespoons is perfect. Okay. I'm gonna put this in here now. That's gonna help it cream up here a little bit. Okay, let's talk about extracts a little bit here. So the goal with this cookie is to make it taste like funfetti cake. And I know we're all about natural, blah, 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 but we're using shortening, so we need to let that go on the side because this is not natural. So I like to put imitation when I can. I love clear vanilla because it tastes almost fake. It's like that artificial taste that we want from like funfetti cookies, or funfetti cake at least. So I'm gonna use, and this one has a concoction. 1 and 2. 1 and 2. Okay, so this is gonna be 2 teaspoons of clear vanilla. Get that out of here. Okay, and then we've got 1 teaspoon, and I actually use like I need to put on there stamped teaspoon. It needs to be like under a teaspoon because vanilla or almond extract is super strong. You have to be very careful with this. And I also don't love to use real almond extract, like pure almond extract. I don't like the flavor for some reason when you combine it with, I don't know what it is. This is just what works for me. So if that's all you have, you can make these still, but I like the imitation. I think it tastes a little bit better. So we're gonna put that in here. Okay, and then another thing. I know I talked about the butter flavor, but this is a new development, so you're gonna have to write this down on your paper. I have started putting butter extract into this, and it's so good. It adds so much, and this is like a literal whisper, like a whisper of it. Like you need none. You cannot put any in there because it will taste disgusting if you do put a lot.
It's a what? It's a whisper.
It's a whisper.
Huge.
A zhuzh. No, a zhuzh. See, I always used to say like, oh, let's zhuzh it up a little bit, you know, change it. I guess that's a Jewish thing from the East Coast. I don't know where I learned that. But everyone was like, how do you spell that? I'm like, I don't know. Z-H-U-H, I guess? I don't know. But anyway, it's a little zhuzh.
Of butter.
A zhuzh, a whisper. I just used a teaspoon and just like went, whoop. Yeah, because again, I don't want to get another one out because then I have to do the dish, you know? Okay, I'm gonna scrape this. Okay,
Like an eighth of a teaspoon?
sure, less than that. Yes.
The butter vanilla emulsion.
You go, girl. I'm just telling you what works for me. You go. You try and let me know how it goes.
Okay.
This is all that I use at home, so that's what I'm gonna stick with. I actually really love what's it called? It's like in a blue bottle. Do you sell them?
Casa.
I'm not gonna tell them if.
You can.
It's Casa something.
Bella Vita.
Casa Bella Vida. It's like this. It's delicious, but they don't sell it here, so buy this, McCormick's. Okay.
It is good.
It's good. Okay, so I'm gonna pour this in here now. We're ready to go. And I normally would not use this. I would just do it directly in here, but for today we're gonna do this. Okay, so that's going here. We put the water in. So let's do the eggs now. I'm a believer of doing it in a separate dish, so I guess that's another dish we have to do. If I were doing it at home, then I don't, but you know, you get shells in there and it really messes up with everything. So I'm gonna do it this way. These are at room temperature, but if I'm doing this at home, they're not. They're taken directly from the fridge because who has time to do that? Not me. Okay, here we go. Let's put these in here. Cool. We're gonna scrape. I have a different mixer at home. I have like a bigger size, and so usually it hits the side a little bit better. So I'm just gonna make sure to scrape this because we don't want it to be gross. Okay, there's that. Okay, so now we're gonna do all of our dry ingredients, and then we're pretty much done. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take this off of here and leave the beater inside, undo it from here, like that. And then I put it on here and I tear it, so we're at 0. How easy is that? It's amazing. And then you don't have stuff flying everywhere. Oh, okay, so now I'm gonna put 600 grams of flour in here. I hope this is 600 grams.
You can get more.
I think I need a titch. I need a little bit. Here, just put it in here. Just a little bit. Thank you. Okay, then I also have 2 teaspoons of baking soda. I have 1 teaspoon of baking powder. It adds a little bit of lift. And then it has some kosher salt in here. I put a full teaspoon. Actually, I put a little bit more than that, like a teaspoon and a half. I know it says a teaspoon on here. But if you're using like regular salt, table salt at home, it's different. I don't know if you guys know that. So kosher salt has bigger crystals, so it's not gonna be as, oh, they look so beautiful, you two. Thank you, amazing. Oh, thanks. So we got 600 grams of this in here. But yeah, kosher salt is less salty. It's because it's a bigger crystal, so you're not gonna have, it's not gonna be as salty as if you were using table salt. So I like to use kosher salt because we can control the salt a little bit better. And I like to put like a teaspoon and a half sometimes because my whole thing with baking, look, it says it literally right here, life's too short, eat the whole cookie. We don't like things that are too sweet around here. At least I don't. Because if it is, then you can't eat the whole thing. I'm not about cutting it in quarters like we have to do at that place down the road with the pink boxes. No, you should be able to eat the whole dang cookie. And this cookie, at least I believe and others believe, that it's not too sweet, that you're feeling like that gross taste in your mouth. No. So this is it. So we're gonna put all that in here like this. We're just gonna put it all in together. There's no back and forth. Just throw it all in there. Because it will all get mixed in. It's such a science, isn't it? Just throw it in.
Did you use table salt or kosher salt?
This is kosher salt, yeah. And Diamond Crystal kosher salt is the best. If you're gonna use, what's the other one? Morton. It's a little bit different, and it has it's like a little bit bigger crystals, so you have to be a little bit more careful with that. So this is made with Diamond Crystal, this recipe. And yeah, add like a little 0.5 next to the salt. It's nice to have a little bit more salt. Okay, now we're gonna go here. I'm gonna turn this on. This recipe, depending on who you are and what size cookies you like, makes about 12. But we got a lot more if you use it to make them smaller. But I like to make them very large, so you'll see how that goes. Okay, we're just gonna get this all perfect. Good to go. Yeah, so there you have it. That's a traditional dough. You could add regular chocolate chips to this and be good to go. Or just take out the almond extract and take out the butter extract and just have the vanilla in there, and you have a great chocolate chip cookie. That's the original grandma's recipe. So let's talk about chocolate chips. That's why we're here, right? This is chocolate extravaganza. So baking chips, chocolate chips, when we think about that, we understand. We get the old Nestle chips or whatever your grandma used to use. I am a fan of the Nestle from Costco because it's just easy to buy a lot. But we also know that there is a lot better quality out there, and that's why we like to shop here at Gigi, because they have all those amazing products at our fingertips, super accessible to us. So chocolate chips, if you don't know, they have stabilizers in them. They have less cocoa butter. Is that correct? Got it, I remembered it. Less cocoa butter, and there's some stabilizers in there, because usually when we're baking them in the oven, when they come out, they're still the shape of a chocolate chip. If you're using something like Couverture or compound chocolate, which if you're not familiar, Couverture chocolate is real chocolate, what we think about. That has to be tempered if we're melting it, whereas compound, that has other things added into it, correct? Thank you. I'm rusty. That has things added into it, so it's easier to melt. You do not have to do it, but it's not necessarily the best flavor. So I know there's like a little saying that there is.
Oh, this is gonna be a good
I don't
test.
remember the test. I only remember, don't be a rookie. Leave baking chips for cookies. But what's the beginning? Give it to me.
Couverture to impress and compound for less stress.
Ah, thank you. Yeah. So Couverture is impressive. If you're making a really beautiful dipped chocolate strawberry, you're gonna want to use Couverture chocolate because that is gonna be the most delicious thing. But if you're gonna make, hundreds of pretzel rods and you want to dip those for your neighbors, use compound because it's so much easier. You just melt it in the microwave and you're done. No tempering is involved. So with chocolate chips, same how those have their purposes, so do these, because you don't want to use chocolate chips to melt and dip things in. They have those stabilizers in them, so it's never going to work the way you want it to. I've been known to do it occasionally if I don't have anything else at home, or if I'm making brownies or something and I need to melt chocolate, then I will do that. But usually I will go for something better like Calavo chocolate or Ghirardelli or something that's gonna have Guittard. Those are the best brands. These are the Guittard baking chips, white chocolate cookie drops. And I really like this. This is the 700 count. And I actually, when I was working here, learned when there's a number on it here, that means that's how many are in a pound. So the bigger the number, the smaller they're gonna be. Yeah. So this is a 700 count. It's a really good size chip to use in something like this. Yeah, don't melt them. They could be Couverture or compound. We did some cookie tests. It was like my first big thing we did here, and it was amazing. If you've never seen those videos, like scroll back on the Instagram to the very, what was that, 2020, August of 2020, when I started here. That was like my first thing that I did. And we got into the kitchen. I was so intimidated because it was like Heather, like famous Heather, and I was with her in the kitchen. It was so cool. We were talking about baking pans and how to make cookies using them. Uh-oh. Hi. That's my nephew. He's the best. So we were cooking in the kitchen, and I have like a chocolate chip cookie recipe that I perfected over the years as well. That's different from this one. And anyway, we were baking them one day, and she walks in, and I had like merchandise from Small Kitchen Sweets, and she like pulled off of her apron, and she had my shirt on underneath, and I was like, oh, I love it here already. That was like my first day of work. It was amazing. So that was just you know, I knew it was going to be love at first sight from there. But anyway, so we made those cookies that I was talking about in those videos using Couverture Calais from Calabo. And they were delicious. They tasted so good. But afterwards, I was like, actually, I think if we're going to keep making these, we need to put chocolate chips back into them. So it changes it slightly. And I'm used to those old Nestle chips. Because that's what my mom used to buy. You know, she'd store them in the freezer. Whenever we needed a little treat, we would go in there and get a cold handful of chocolate chips, or like chocolate chips. Oh, nothing better than that. So I like to stick with that. And I think that's the important thing to know about family recipes, is sometimes there's just no reason why. You just have to do it because grandma said to, or it's because the way your mom used to do it. And that's such a big thing for me. You know, we tell stories and have memories through food. And if we don't keep some of those things, yeah, it's okay to change things here and there, but it's so important to hold on to those and keep them alive in the family for traditions. That's like the biggest thing I learned here, is that you tell stories through food, and I just like am such a firm believer of that now. So anyway, okay, so let me pour these in. I'm not gonna measure them. It says 100 grams. Meh, just throw them in. Come on.
Measure with your heart.
What?
Measure with your heart.
Measure with your heart. Thank you. Yeah. So I'm just gonna pour those in. Again, these are white chocolate. You could do these with milk chocolate, or not milk chocolate. Do not use milk chocolate in cookies. I'm sorry. Use semi-sweet only. And then let's do sprinkles here. So, of course, this is my favorite part. We did a whole series on sprinkles about all the different types. There's like 20 different versions of sprinkles. We call these decorettes, or they're called jimmies on the East Coast. It's like what you put on ice cream, because they're made out of like a cornstarch mixture, and that does really well in the oven because it doesn't bleed. I also really love, because another thing about baking a lot and often is that it's really difficult sometimes to buy bulk ingredients. Gigi, of course, is amazing at that, and that's why we shop here. But like for a long time at the beginning of my baking, I would buy like huge 7 pounds of Funfetti sprinkles on Amazon because that was easier, and you know, I wasn't living here yet, and but the colors were horrible. They were just like this weird yellow, and like they were not good. And these sprinkles that Gigi have are the best because the blue, it just adds so much. So buy them here. These are the best. Rainbow Decorettes. You gotta do it. Okay, so I'm gonna pour these into, I'm measuring with my heart. It says 100 grams. It says I always add more. I do always add more. Because it just adds to the fun, you know? Just keep throwing them in there. You really have to be careful. You can't just throw any sprinkles that you have in at home, and it's fun. We use this recipe to test different sprinkles in here and how they would work in the oven, because a lot of them melt in the oven. And these ones stay their shape, and they're really pretty. They bleed just a titch, but it's really nice to have that. Yeah?
So does that company make like a Christmas color?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Those sprinkles?
They have a whole
Okay,
mix.
great.
And do you make your own mix?
Yeah, we
Yeah, they make their own mix here, which is
Awesome.
incredible. Obviously they do. Okay, so we're gonna do this. Okay, that's good to go. Another thing I like to do as well, this is how I test to see if it's good to go. Because another thing with baking, yes, we did exactly as this recipe stated. I mean, give or take a little bit here and there. But in general, you know, we followed the recipe. But sometimes your kitchen is a little different. Sometimes the humidity is different in your house. All of those kinds of things can affect it. And if the way I test this specific recipe with shortening and stuff, I put my hand on the dough. And if I pull it back and there's nothing on it, then I know that it's ready to go. If it was too wet, then it wouldn't set up the way that I've known them to. And we made hundreds of these cookies, you know, when we were baking a lot to sell to friends and stuff. And so I really knew what it felt like. So that was my biggest test, is just like pull your hand off of it. Which I think is probably from the shortening that helps with it, because butter acts a little differently. So anyway.
But you want to see shortening, but not wet.
No, you don't want anything to come back on your hands. There's like a little bit of, oil from the shortening, but it's not sticking, that's what I mean. And that's why, you know, if it does stick to your hand, just add a little bit more flour, and then you should be good to go. Okay, so I'm gonna take this all off of here. These are clean hands. When I worked on the floor here, I always used to say, you know, the best tool that we do not sell is your hands. Just wash your hands. Seriously, that's what chefs do in the kitchen. In a professional kitchen, they use their hands to do things. And I think it's okay to do that. As long as you wash your hands, you're totally fine. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you taste, sometimes you lick. It's in the oven, it'll kill it. Okay, I'm gonna pull this to the side. And let's talk about the baking. process. Okay, so these are my best friend. I love cookie scoops so much. They change your baking, I think. They add that level of professionalism that I've always wanted to like strive to be with my baking. And these are they're easy. They're out on the floor. They're used in the lunchrooms at schools. But this is like the, what is this called? But food scoop. But what's this version called? Hand squeezer. This is this version, but there's also another version that is like a food disher. I love the food dishers, and I think they're great, especially for this, because sometimes it can be a little bit wet when you're scooping over and over and over. But these work great if you're just baking occasionally. So both are awesome. Today we're going to use a 16, which is pretty big. I use a 10 sometimes, which is literally like this big of a cookie, but you know, it works for Spencer size, you got it. But then for these ones over here, we used, I think, a 24. So as you get a larger number, you're going to have a smaller cookie, which absolutely makes no sense to me, but it makes sense to whoever is making these.
You can ask Candace why, she'll tell you why.
Can you tell me?
I'm really obsessed with food dishers.
Tell me, why?
It's based on how many scoops you can get out of a quart.
Oh. Well, that makes sense. Okay, I get it now.
Got you, Spencer.
You got me, thank you. Look, it's a family affair. They stayed for my class, cuties.
It's 3 against 1, so we got you.
Yeah, you got me.
We got Google in our pockets.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna. Okay, cool. I am gonna dish these out now. So, a lot of times when we're using a food disher like this, we scoop them out like this and we set it on the tray. But then, oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot there was a camera. That's so fancy. Is that new? Ah, you guys rolling out the red carpet. Okay, can you see me?
Last class they talked about the red and the blue scoop. How does that compare to a 16 or whatever?
Red and the blue?
The red and the blue are the thumb dishers. So the thumb dishers have different colored handles so you can tell. On the squeeze dishers, they have a number on that thing that spins.
Yep, it's right inside here.
I'll help you.
So if you're getting a handled colored one, you can get a blue handled one. That's a 16, and that's what I like to use for this. But there's also a white handled one that's really big. That's a number 10, I believe. So just depends. But anyway, so when you're scooping these out onto a tray, you could easily just do it like this and go. But I want to add that little extra bit to it. So I zhuzh it. I don't know if you can see this. Okay. Oh, hey! What's up? Cool. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it over because I want a nice flat top to this. So it's a little bit of an extra step. So we have the right size that we want, but we're just flipping it over so we get a really even bake on the top. So we're going to do that. And also, when I'm using these bigger ones, I only bake 6 on a tray. And trust me, we have tried everything to bake more on a tray. We've tried to bake multiple in an oven at a time, but you just have to do it this way because if you don't, then it's a mess when you're trying to do a lot because then they like spread and they go into each other and it's a whole thing. So we're not going to do that. So I'm going to put it on here. Good to go. Amazing. Hey. Okay. Okay. Is there an oven free?
Yes.
Amazing.
Do you typically freeze them?
I'm sorry?
Do you typically freeze them?
Oh, close that up. I do. I usually put it, there's no, it's just how I feel that day. Yes, I do put them in there for like usually about 10 minutes, but this is going to be fine.
Okay.
It just depends on what time you have. I will say, this is a hard recipe because I do not recommend putting them in the fridge overnight. They never work for me. I don't know why, because when my mom does it, it does. With like the traditional chocolate cookie recipe. But for this one, it always, I think it has to do with the shortening, the grease in it. I don't know what it is, but for me, I like to just bake them. You can the same day, I would say. You're gonna be okay, but it's really just make them. And the nice thing about weighing, it's so fast. I can make a whole batch of cookies in literally like 25 minutes. I start the oven, make the whole thing, put them in really quickly, and they're done. And that's a great party trick. If someone comes over, you just make cookies really fast. Oh, so nice. So yeah, I would recommend just baking them when they're there, but if you need to put them in the fridge for a little bit to set up, depends on how hot it is. This is okay, I think we should be fine. If these come out a little bit wonky, then we'll throw it in there for a minute. But yeah, that's it. Here's the end. This is the end here. We've got, these are a little bit smaller, so the baking time is always going to be a little bit different. But I know for these larger cookies that the recipe calls for, it's about 12 to 14 minutes. If sometimes your oven isn't fully preheated, then it's going to be a little bit longer. So another thing I like to tell, and I learned this from Courtney, Cake by Courtney, if you are familiar with her, she's the best. She always says to preheat your oven for a very long time, because when that buzzer rings to tell you that it's preheated, it's not fully preheated. That means like one part of the oven, like right by the temperature gauge, is preheated. So
30 minutes.
yes, 30 minutes. Yeah. So I just turn it on sometimes and just leave it on all day. My house is really hot, but it's fine. It's okay. It saves money in the winter, I guess. But yeah, so I think preheating your oven to make sure it's super hot is good, and you can never go wrong with that. Let me see. Yeah, preheat that oven. Preheat it.
What's the yield on the size that you make?
These are about 12,
For the 3
and
hours?
actually sometimes it's 11. I don't know why, but
Probably not any chocolate chips.
it's just it is. You got it. Yeah, and sometimes I put a lot more than I probably.
Sometimes you look at your
Yes, that too. Sometimes you take a spoon out. If my mom's in the kitchen, she wants like a whole scoop. So, can I get another sheet tray, please? Is there any? And some parchment. Thank you. Yeah, so I don't really prep them before. You can prep the ingredients if you need to make it a lot quicker. But again, this is really fast. You saw it come together, and I was talking a lot in between. But if you weren't and you have everything, a lot of these things are just things you have in your your pantry at home, except the shortening. Maybe not all of you. At my house, we always had shortening because we always made these cookies. So they're really fast to make, and I don't think you necessarily need to. I did not set a timer. Anybody? Hold on.
What do you need it
For the oh, thank you. Yeah, you set it for 12. Okay. So while these are baking, let's talk a little bit about some other things. So I'm a big believer in learning the recipe before you want to make any changes to it. I think, make it how it's written first. Whenever I do a recipe for the first time, I always like to do that. We did so much testing, and like these people who are creating these recipes, doesn't matter who it is, if it's your grandma or if it's a blogger or if it's a magazine, they did it for a reason, and they spend a lot of time. This cookie took me so long to come together. And there's still recipes that other things that I've wanted to make, and they just never turned out because there was so much testing involved. So trust the recipe creator when they're doing something. Because if you make a slight change, sure, it might be fine, but then sometimes it doesn't work. And so just do what's written. But then within that, I like to treat recipes like cooking, like, savory cooking. Once I've, perfected it and made it a few times, it becomes cooking because you can change things, and I think that that's okay. Once you've kind of made it your own, then you can change things. So I'm a huge believer, like you can change up flavors. For instance, in this one, I have done it with peppermint extract instead of almond, and it was like a peppermint cookie, and I think that's really fun to do. But that's not changing the chemistry of the cookie. That's only changing the flavors. That's why we can put, different sprinkles in. You have to be careful about melting, but you can do that. It's not going to change it. I wouldn't put 1 egg instead of 3. That's really going to change the chemistry of what you're doing. But changing the flavors, that's really fun. That's where you can that's how I came up with this recipe. Because I knew Grandma's recipe like back to front. But then I was like, why don't I throw white chocolate chips into this? And why don't I add a little bit of almond extract in, and this is going to taste right. So I think that is a huge, you should feel like very confident in doing that. And I love that part of cooking and baking. When you learn something, I can add and subtract or throw a dash of that and a pinch of this in because I know these recipes really well. And you can do the same thing. Does anybody have any questions? I've been rambling for a while, but...
Talk about the round cookie thingies.
Oh yes, when they come out. So I love, it's called the Cookie Scoot, patented by me, TM at the end. I learned this from a blogger on the internet when I was just baking at home, and I was like, oh, that looks cool, I should try that. But it's amazing. It's so easy to do. So when it comes out of the oven, what you do is you take this round cookie cutter. It could be a cookie cutter. I've had to use a bowl sometimes, like this size of bowl, because I make really large cookies. And so sometimes you have to use something a little bit larger.
Do you want to do it under the camera?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. I forget there's a camera. There's also like an Atico, do you still sell that? Yeah, there's like a biscuit cutter round set that comes with like a nesting of like 20 different sizes of these cookie cutters, and this the largest size in there works perfectly for this. This is like a biscuit cutter, you can see. It has the fluted edge to it, but we're not going to use the fluted edge. We're just going to use the regular side. And so essentially it comes out of the oven. It's super hot on this tray. And it hasn't set up yet because it's still piping hot. So what you can do is you just put it over the top like this, and you just move it around, and it turns it into a perfect circle every single time. And that is like, adds this level of professionalism. And when I'm putting them in boxes or something, and you open the box up and it's like perfect circles, it's the best thing ever. So I think this is super easy. You can even use a cup. If you use these great deli containers, you can use the bottom of that. Anything that you have at home will work. This is from that Atico. This is a Fat Daddy-O one, but Atico makes one as well. And it's great. So when these come out of the oven, I should have put some in a little bit earlier. Sorry about that. We got a few more minutes here. Didn't set the timer. Did you set it? Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, so you should try that. I'll show you how it works when it's done.
Do they sell them here?
Yes.
We sure do. Come on down. I'll show you where they are. Who else has a question?
Stephanie does.
Question?
Oh,
Hi.
question. I was just going to tell you that I had to make cookies a couple nights ago for Ellie's AP art class,
Uh-huh.
and I did that.
Oh.
She said that they were like, "How does your mom get these so circle?"
It's like you're a bakery.
It was just funny that they commented like how they were a perfect circle.
Yeah.
Because yes, I do that.
Yeah.
Because you.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad. I did not invent it. A lot of people do it. Like Sai from Bountiful Kitchen, she also does it as well, and it's a great tip. But it's funny because I work for the government now. So exciting. It's actually the best job ever. It's so wonderful. I love Salt Lake City. I'm a huge fan. I actually have a coworker here, Lindsay. She's the best. Yes, of course. Woo! But the other day I took some cookies to work, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, what bakery did you get these from?" I was like, "I made them." And everyone was like, "What?"
I'd like to interject. He didn't bring them just to a meeting. He brought them to the mayor.
Oh, yeah. The first time I met the mayor, we worked really closely with her office, and the first time I met her, my director of my department was like, "Oh, Spencer, he bakes." And she said, "Well, where's the cookies?" She said that like the first moment I met her. I was like, "Oh my gosh, okay." So then the next meeting I went to, I took a big thing of these party cookies, and I got an email from her assistant later that day, and she was like, "Just so you know, we all fought over those cookies." And I was like, "Wow, okay, cool." So if you need anything done in government, make these cookies. Bring them over. The mayor would love it. But yeah, it really adds a level of professionalism. This is a home, you're making these at home for your family. It doesn't have to be like this. But you can do these kinds of things that just like, we learned, making hundreds and hundreds of these, that was a nice touch to make them all look the same. But if they're not, who cares? It's not a big deal at all. How are we doing on time?
5 more minutes.
5 more minutes. Okay, let's check. Oh, they're looking good.
I'm gonna call Stephanie out for a second.
Okay.
She said sometimes when I make recipes, like cookie recipes, they don't turn out the way, like, what are some of the things that you normally deal with,
Yeah.
Steph? When you said, I've made Spencer's recipes, but I don't feel like they turn out the
Oh,
way
no.
that he makes them.
Like Spencer.
Yeah, you told me that. So that's why you said you were coming today.
Like either too like puffy or too flat or.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah, I think it really depends on your oven. You gotta get to know that temperature. These, we can see, I think these were made in a couple of different ovens. And these ones are a little bit darker than some of these ones that are a little bit lighter over here. And so it really makes a difference depending on the oven that you have in. And I know my oven like intimately. Like sometimes I sit on the floor and watch the window because I'm like, I gotta just make sure. It's a huge, it's such a difference. And I have an electric oven, but I've worked with gas before and it's completely different that way as well. So you really have to just know your oven. I think the flatness can have to do with the temperature of your ingredients. Sometimes the hot water can make it a little bit more slack. That's why I like to do the test with my hand, and adding a little bit more flour is always okay. And it's never like a cup of flour, it's more like a couple teaspoons or 2 tablespoons of I think that's good. I think also the baking time for these ones, I like to take them out a little bit sooner than you might think because they're going to continue baking on the tray. But also, you want them to be slightly doughy in the middle, but not too doughy. And so that is another thing that depends. Looking beautiful, Tracy.
Oh, thank you.
You're Tracy, right?
Yes,
Okay, I saw that. Okay, love that. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. Are there any other things that like people troubleshoot when they're doing?
She needs the other cooling rack.
Oh, here's a cooling rack. I stole it from you. I'm so sorry.
Way to go.
Thank you.
We got lots of treats up there. Get ready, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there anything? Is there anything else that? Yeah.
Do you ever bake with convection or just?
Yeah, I mean, I've never been privileged enough to own a convection oven, but at my mom's house, she has one, and we used it a lot. I do think it changes it slightly. You have to be a little bit careful because it's always hotter. So I would take the temperature down a bit, and I didn't make this recipe with that. So, you know, so you just have to like experiment a little bit and expect it to be a little wonky. I think you're fine if you use, what is it, 15 degrees? 25, yeah, so you bake it at 325 instead of 350. I know 350 is a little bit high, isn't it? No, that's a normal cookie time. But then the original recipe my mom makes is 375. So I changed to 350, I don't know why, but I did. So yeah, you just have to be careful. Just as long as you know your oven and you know that it works to bake 2 trays, then you should be fine. Anybody else? No?
What are we doing on?
Oh,
What's your favorite flavor combination you've made besides curry?
the Oreo.
Okay.
The Oreo is so good. Like, not to toot my own horn, but it is very delicious. And it's better than that place with the pink boxes because it's not too sweet. Lots of salt.
Did you use crushed Oreo?
Oh no, it's a whole thing. It's like a soft Oreo that I make.
It's on his website.
It's on my website, check it out. It's actually, okay, this is exciting. It's in a cookbook. I am published in a cookbook. It's so cool. 3 of my recipes that were in a magazine, it's called Bake From Scratch magazine. They were in a magazine last year at Christmas time, and then they called me this year and said, we want to put these into a book. And you can buy it at Barnes & Noble and stuff. I'm like, that is so cool. So go and buy it.
Name of the book?
It's really original. Christmas cookies.
Easy to buy.
But yeah, it's by the Bake From Scratch team. So check it out. It's really cool. Like my name's in there and everything. It's
We'll just have to do an
Full
Oreo
circle.
class now.
Oreo class. Yes, Oreo class. Hi.
Please sing one of your songs.
I'm not singing. Absolutely not.
Just one line.
No, I'm not doing that. I am not being paid.
I'll dance for you behind.
I'll tap. There's Whitney. Whitney was Kathy Selden in the show, the lead material. Hey, no. I have to compartmentalize my life because I have lots of stuff.
Do you typically sing while you bake or know your phone?
No, I'm more of a listener to music. I always have a jazz playlist, like old 1940s, like it's very old school. I think it's because I learned from my grandparents. My grandparents love music, and I would grow up, you know, baking in the kitchen with them, and we have this really famous. Oh, we're checking them?
I think
Oh, delish. They look so good. Oh, yeah. Hooray! This is what they look like when you have a number 16. Look, they're big, I know, but it's so worthwhile.
What do you need?
Where's my little thing? Oh no. See, look. It's too small. We're gonna use.
The bowl.
No, not that one. Stop, stop it.
It's fine, it's just egg.
You pour the sugar out of that one.
See, on top. Circle. It usually like moves around a little bit more. But look at that. Glass bowl.
Dump the powder or the brown sugar out. It's fine.
This is too big now. It's not gonna fit on the tray.
Spencer size.
Anyway, the idea is sometimes you can even, if I use like this, and you can just like get the edges a little bit, and you can just push it into the circle. These are pretty good because we used our cookie scoop, which is really nice. But sometimes when you're making other types of cookies, where they're like, you have to roll them, or they're too small or something like that, then it's a lot nicer for that. Or if you're using 2 spoons, for instance, you don't have a scoop at home, that's totally fine. Just do it like that, and then at the end, make them perfect. It's great. But yes, here it turns out. You can see they're puffed up a little bit, but they will flatten out as they cool, but they're still baking on this tray. And another thing too, a lot of people say like, wow, these are kind of like biscuits. They're a different type of cookie because they're so fluffy. And I really love that. It's like a cakey cookie. They're not gonna be like flat and crisp. I don't love that. It's like a biscuit, like those British biscuits. No, this is a cookie to me. So, and oh, the last final thing, Maldon sea salt. We're gonna put a little bit of that on top because you can never have too much salt. We'll just sprinkle a little bit of that on top as they cool. And you're all set to go. There you have it, party cookies.
How long are you leaving it on the baking?
I usually leave it for about 10 minutes. Yeah, because they really will continue to cook. Because a lot of people, like when I was talking to Carlisle, she was like, you only bake them for that long? And I'm like, yes, because if you continue to bake them in the oven and then take them out and don't take them immediately off, then they will keep baking and you'll get them brown. I also don't really love when they get too dark on top. I like this lighter look to them. So that's why I like to bake for less. So this one was like, what, 12 to 14 for this size of cookie, but for those I would say probably 8 to 10. Another thing, these ones you can see are a little bit taller. It's because they were cold. These were made a few days ago, and they're gonna taste the exact same, but it's just the way that they kind of fall onto the tray is gonna be slightly different. Any other questions? You can come up and talk to me too, but yeah.
Okay, so when I do make my chocolate chip cookies, sometimes the middle is higher than the edges.
Mhm.
Why does it do that?
Just depends on how high you're mounding them, I think, probably. I mean, do you usually use a scoop and like put them there, do you flatten them?
No.
That's probably why.
Okay.
If you turn them upside down like this, then it's flattening them a little bit more so they have even room, but if it's too tall, then you'll get that dome. And sometimes it falls, but then there can be sometimes like really doughy in the middle, so. I would just flatten it a titch.
Yeah, I do it.
Yeah. I do that too sometimes. If there's cookies, sometimes these get a little bit too high, and I just use a spatula right when they come out. I do my little cookie scoop and then press them down a little bit. That happens with the Oreos a lot because it's this very similar recipe to this, but sometimes they just are a little bit too tall, and so I press them down so there's enough room for the frosting. Anything else? Well, thank you all so much for coming. Come up here and get some cookies. There's plenty for all of you. Have any questions, let me know. Also, I have some great stickers if you want some, because I ordered a ton of these and I don't really bake anymore, sad. So come and get some stickers. Also, let's give it a round of applause to the Gigi team. Woo! Seriously, they have done so much. What Gigi does is they provide education to us all. I mean, they work tirelessly to put together their magazine, to put together their blog. It is incredible the amount of work that goes into this. And so, like, thank you for doing this continually. Love you guys. Thank you.
One song?
What?
One song?
I'm not singing. Get out of here. Bye.